This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
First, I'd like to start off thanking Mechel. He came over to me after he heard Rabbi Glatstein speak. He said, we have to have him for Chanukah. So I said, I have the right man. I called my brother-in-law, Nasi Weldler, David's father, Called me Shver, and I called him up. I said, would you be able to tour up a miracle of Chanukah and get Rabbi Glatstein to come speak for us? So he's calling back. 8th night of Chanukah, Zois Chanukah. There'll be one more miracle. Well, he's going to come all the way in from Cedarhurst. Above driving from Muncie to Cedarhurst. 18 inches of snow on the ground. We're not stopping. Chanukah is going to continue, and we're going to be joyful to hear. Baruch Hashem. Thank you very much for coming. Rabbi Glatstein, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Rosh Hashiva, for the warm introduction. This is my second time speaking for part of the yeshiva, so it's a chus to be able to speak to all the yeshivas, b'shus all the chashiva, Rosh Yeshiva, and Rabbeim, and Talmidim. Thank you for the opportunity to share with you some divrei Torah, l'kavod zois Chanukah. I want to thank my dear friend, Rabbi Weldler. Actually, I think about Rabbi Weldler every day of Chanukah because we say Nasi, 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 you know. So the truth is, he is a Nasi b'Yisrael. He's really a prince. And the biggest miracle was that in the morning there were 2 feet of snow on the ground, and within an hour, as soon as Rav Nasi agreed to come, somehow it disappeared. So that's also one of the Nisim and the Flois. But my Zayda, he should live and be well. He was 100 years old a very long time ago. And he was a survivor of Auschwitz and all the bad places. He was a Talmud Muvuk of Rabbi Menachem Zemba. He was a Ben Bayis by Rabbi Menachem Zemba. He had smicha already before the war from Rav Shlomo David Kahana. And in an interesting turn of events, after the war, he happened to have learned English before the Holocaust. And when he was liberated, so the American Army made him the go-between, the liaison between the American Army and the survivors. And they gave him an army uniform, and they gave him a jeep, and they put him in charge of the Sfarim depot in Europe, meaning Hitler gathered all the Sfarim in Europe into central locations. What he was going to do with them, it's not clear. He was going to make a museum of what the Israelites used to do in Europe before he destroyed them. And upon liberation, my grandfather had the keys to these central libraries, and he brought a lot of the Sfarim back to America. So one of the Sfarim that I found in his house is called Minhagei Chasam Sofer. It's not a very rare sefer, it's an available sefer. And in the Minhagei Chasam Sofer says a davar nifla ad ma'od, a wondrous thing. Says the Chasam Sofer that on Chanukah one has to be engaged, one has to be devoted to learning Torah more than any other time of the year, because the Yetzer Hara exerts the most energy and effort to try to get somebody to waste their time on Chanukah more than any time of the year. So the Chasam Sofer would say, Chanukah is l'hodos or l'halel, it's for ruchnius, it's not l'mishta v'simcha, and therefore one has to be involved in Limud HaTorah more than any other time of the year. And then the Chasam Sofer drops the bombshell. You ready for this? You know why? You know why on Chanukah one has to be involved in learning more than any other time of the year? Because Chanukah is the days that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave to Moshe Rabbeinu the Soidos HaTorah. HaKadosh Baruch Hu taught Moshe Rabbeinu the secrets of the Torah on Chanukah. It's a hafla of a fella. It's mamish. Where did the Chassam Sofer get this from? Who told the Chassam Sofer that HaKadosh Baruch Hu taught the secrets of Torah to Moshe Rabbeinu on Chanukah? How could you even make heads or tails on this? We know Moshe Rabbeinu went up to Har Sinai. He goes up on Shavuos, on Vav Sivan. He comes down 40 days later. As far as I know, between Vav Sivan and Shavuos Tammuz, Chanukah doesn't usually fall out. And then Moshe Rabbeinu went up a second time. Moshe Rabbeinu goes up Yud Ches Tammuz, and he comes back down Erev Rosh Chodesh Elul. And as far as I know, in Tammuz and Av, also Chanukah doesn't usually fall out. And then Moshe Rabbeinu went up a third time to Har Sinai. He went up Rosh Chodesh Elul, and he comes down on Yom Kippur. And at least in the 5 towns, Chanukah has never come out between Rosh Chodesh Elul and Yom HaKippurim. So what in the world is the Chassam Sofer talking about? That Moshe Rabbeinu was given the secrets of Torah on Chanukah. Nobody says Pshat. So it's a mitzvah to try to explain what's Pshat in the Chassam Sofer. What does the Chassam Sofer mean? He's telling his Talmidim, you need to learn more Torah on Chanukah than any time of the year, because that's when HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave over to Moshe Rabbeinu the secrets of Torah. We know there's no Masechta on Chanukah. Everybody knows the famous question, why is there no Masechta on Chanukah? The Tamei HaMinhagim brings down a pshat from the Chassam Sofer, and the Sefer Chod HaMeshulash, they say over from the Chassam Sofer, but there's a lot of controversy whether in fact the Chassam Sofer said that it's because Rabbi, who redacted the Mishnah, did not want to include the miracle of Chanukah because the Chashmonaim took away the Melucha, and Rabbi mi Beis David Kasina. There's a lot of controversy. Did the Chassam Sofer in fact say that? But Rabbi said it's more than the fact that there's no Masechta on Chanukah. Because, okay, you don't have to have a Masechta. You could have more than 2.5 blot in Bameh Madlikin about Chanukah. I mean, you could clear Chakiros about Echvesa. Let's say somebody doesn't have oil on the last night of Chanukah, and let's say, Lamashal, he sees his friend's Menorah is burning, and after a half hour, you want to put out your friend's menorah, and then you want to light it. I mean, you could have a whole sugya. Nobody told me that this was this. I'm just, looking at your faces. And I mean, you could have blot and blot and blot about various chakiras. Only 2.5 blot in the whole Masechta Shabbos. B'chla, it's not just in the Gemara it's missing. In the whole Zohar HaKadosh, Chanukah is mentioned one time. It's like it's taboo. Nobody wants to talk about it. Why is there no mention of Chanukah? Not in the Gemara, really. Hardly in the Mishnah. Not in the Zohar HaKadosh. Chazal say Moshe Rabbeinu had a hard time with the Menorah. Moshe Rabbeinu couldn't really grasp the Menorah. How do we know that? Because Hashem said, V'zeh maseh ha-menorah. This is the act of the menorah. This is how you make the menorah. Say Chazal malamin shenaskasha Moshe b'menorah. I don't understand. The menorah is more complicated than the Aron. It's more complicated than the Shulchan. It's more complicated than the Yeriyos, Hoizim. Oh, why is the menorah more complex? What did Moshe not get about the menorah? I guarantee if you could make kruvim, if you could make miksha, if you could make mizlagois and all those different tools at the end of Parsha's Truma, whatever the ya'im, then you can make a menorah. What was so difficult about the menorah? There's halacha that you're not allowed to get hana from the neros of Chanukah. Why can't you get hana from the neros of Chanukah? It has kedusha. The neros have kedusha. We say haneros halalu koydeshem. Do they have real kedusha? Not really. I mean, they're chefza shel mitzvah. Chefza shel mitzvah has kedusha. They don't really have kedusha. I have a question. Let's say your glasses are a little dirty. They're foggy. So you want to and take a talis and clean your glasses. Mutter or asar? It's probably mutter. Rabbi Yashiv says, unless you want to say they're really dirty and it's derech bizayon, but you're allowed to get hana from a talis. There's no isser hana. Let's say you're freezing cold. And achves, you you're in Lakewood, so you're not going to wear one of these big park coats like in my neighborhood, so you put on a tallis, You want to wear a tallis because it's freezing cold outside. You're allowed to do that. Right? We're in Lakewood, no? That's what they told me. I just want to... You're allowed to wear a tallis. You're allowed to get hana from a tallis. Are you allowed to get hana from a chefza shel mitzvah? Avada. There's no Isser hana on any chefza shel mitzvah. So why is it asr lehanois from the light of the menorah? Okay, there's a ran, b'mem adlikin. Tomorrow's Kriyas HaTorah. I know it's the longest weekday Kriyas HaTorah of the whole year. I know everyone's looking forward. But besides that, it's the only time the whole year that you're going to lane from one parsha. And usually when the parsha is over, you stop. There's only one time a year, unless it's a double parsha. It's only one time a year where there's a big stop sign at the end of the parsha. Now it's not a stop sign, it's a red light with points on the insurance. You go right through the red light into the next parsha. It's an interesting phenomenon. It's certainly worthy of our attention. Why is the only time the whole year that we don't stop at the end of a parsha, we go straight into the next parsha? Parshas Nasai going into Bahaloischa and Zois Chanukah. Chanukah is on a funny day of the year. Chafei Kislev. You don't usually have Yom Tovim on Chafei. Usually you start in the beginning of the month, or Tesvav is big, Tesvav. But one time a year we have this interesting Yom Tov, where we start just about, not at the end of the month, close to the end of the month. Why this specific date? Why Chafei Kislev? What's the inyan of Chafei Kislev? So I'll tell you a little story. There was once this little baby, he's in utero, and it happens to many of them. A malach comes, and on top of his head, they light a candle. And the Gemara says that this candle, on the top of this Yiddish baby, is so bright the child could see Misoif ha'olam b'yatzayf. That's what the Gemara says. That every Jewish child could see from one end of the world to the other end of the world. And Chazal say, Umalam de Moisei kol haTorah kula, they teach the child the entire Torah. Okay, and the Gemara says, the Malach comes, the Malach hits the kid, and the kid forgets kol haTorah kula. And the Gemara seems to have forgotten to tell me about one thing. What happened to the candle? The Gemara says the Malach came, he lit a candle on the top of the child's head. It's such a bright candle you could see from here until North Korea. It might be interesting to find out what's going on over there. But you could see from one end of the world to the other end of the world. So what happened to the candle? Where did it go? Is it still lit? Did the Malach put it out? What's the pshat in the Gemara? Why does the Gemara leave out this piece of information? And finally, a very interesting ha'ara. It's a ha'ara of the Yerushalmi. The Yerushalmi tells us that by every single day of creation, Vayomer Elokim Yehi Rakia, Vayehi Rakia, Vayomer Elokim Yehi Ma'oros B'Rakia Shamayim, Vayehi Chen, Vayomer Elokim Nasa Adam, Vayehi Chen, Vayomer Elokim Yishutzu Hamayim Sheretz Nefesh Chaya, Vayehi Chen. By every single act of creation, the Rebbeinu Shalom said, Vayehi Chen, Vayehi Chen, Vayehi Chen, every single time, with one exception. On the first day of creation, the Rebbeinu Shalom says, Vayomer Elokim Yehi Oyer, and it doesn't say Vayehi Chen. Vayomer Elokim Yehi Or, Vayehi Or. It doesn't say Vayehi Chen. Why doesn't it say Vayehi Chen? Says Yerushalmi very simply. Because when the Rebbeinu Shalom made the Rakia, there was a Rakia. When the Rebbeinu Shalom said there should be Mayim, there was Mayim. And when the Rebbeinu Shalom said there should be a sun and a moon and stars, there was. And when the Rebbeinu Shalom said there should be fish and birds and people, there was. There's only one thing that the Rebbeinu Shalom wanted there to be, but it wasn't, and that's the Ar, the light. The Rebbeinu Shalom said, "Vayomer Elokim Yehi Ar," there should be light, and that was a very special light. That was a powerful light. That was a light with which you could see from one end of the world to the other end of the world. But the Rebbeinu Shalom created that light, but it wasn't. Because Ra Elokim she'ein kedai laha'olam lahashtamish by. Because they're going to be Risham in the world, they're going to be people in the world who are not worthy of this Ar. So the Rebbeinu Shalom had to take away the Ar, and he put away the Ar. He was goynez the Ar. So Vayomer Elokim Yehi Ar, but it wasn't Vayehi Ar. Excuse me, it wasn't Vayehi Chen, it was Vayehi Ar. The Rebbeinu Shalom wanted to create a special light, but the light could not exist, so the Rebbeinu Shalom took the light and he hid it away. For how long did the original light of creation last? For how many days? The Yishalmi says it lasted for a day and a half, for 36 hours. For Friday, Erev Shabbos, 12 hours. For Leil Shabbos, 12 hours. And for Yom HaShabbos, 12 hours. Now that's hard to understand because the Chor Hashem created the light in the beginning of creation, but it seems that only the amount of time that it lit for Adam HaRishon is considered the original light. This original Ar lasted 36 hours. Lamid Vav Sha'is. You know what the remez is? Vayomer Elokim Yehi Ar. Vayar Elokim es ha'ar ki toiv. On that word toiv, there's a Mesorah that the Tes should have 4 tagim. Tes times 4 is 36. That the Rokeach says is the remez that the original light of creation lasted for 36 hours. So now we have a big journey. We have a big obligation. We have an adventure to go on. And the adventure is, Rabbi say, the Rebbeinu Shalom created the world with a special light. But that light could not exist. The Rebbeinu Shalom had to hide it away. Where did he put it? Where's the light? Where did it go? Where is the original Ar of creation? Vayomer Elokim Yehi Ar. And it wasn't Vayehi Chen, it was Vayehi Ar. So where did it go? Where's the light? It says Hashem was goynez it. He hid it. Where did he put it? Where did the Rebbeinu Shalom put the original? So you'll say, I don't know. How am I supposed to know where he put the light? The same way we don't know where the Aron is. So Rav Hutner writes, not so fast. We know exactly where the Aron is. The Mishnah says in Shkolim that a Kohen one day he saw that there was a floorboard of the Beis HaMikdash that was out of place, and he realized the Aron was there, and he didn't have a chance to tell anybody about it until he died. So we knew where the Aron was. So Ganaz doesn't mean it's hidden and you don't know where it is. Ganaz means that while in the past it was active in a very obvious, overt, clear way, and now Ganaz means it's secretive, it's still operative, it's still working, but not in the same open way it once worked. So that means the Ar, we know where the Ar is. It's somewhere that we know about, but it's not out in the open the way it once was. And the question is, where did the Rebbeinu Shalom put the original light of creation? So the Bnei Yissaschar quotes from what he calls 3 Balei Ruach HaKodesh. He quotes from the Rokeach, Rebbe Lezer Migarmaiza, who had Kabbalah from Eliyahu Hanavi. He quotes from the Maharal of Prague, who the Bnei Yissaschar says used the Sefer HaYetzirah. And he quotes from a Pinchas Karatzer, who also he says was a Baal Ruach HaKodesh. That we know exactly where the Ar is. Because if you look in the Medrash Tanchuma, this is the most famous Medrash Tanchuma in all Medrash Tanchuma. You probably heard it in Shmuzin 1,000 times. The Medrash Tanchuma in Parshas Noach, that there's a stira between Nasav and Nishma and Kaf Aleim Har Kegigis, and the Medrash Tanchuma says that the Torah Shebechsav Klal Yisrael said Nasav and Nishma, and the Torah Shebal Peh, it was Kaf Aleim Har Kegigis. Hashem had to force it upon us. Why? Says the Medrash Tanchuma, Because only somebody who exerts themselves, b'chol leiv u'b'chol nefesh, can learn Torah Sheba'al Peh. That's the lashon of the Medrash Tanchuma. But if you look at number 14, I want to share with you simple words of the Medrash Tanchuma. Says the Medrash Tanchuma on the 4th line, Oyer shenivra b'yom rishon shegenozai HaKadosh Baruch Hu la'amelei Torah Sheba'al Peh. The original light of creation, the light of creation with which you could see from one end of the world to the other end of the world, the Rebbeinu Shalom hid away in the Torah HaKadoshah. For those who learn Dafka Torah Sheba'al Peh, the Or HaGanuz is in the Torah Sheba'al Peh. If you look in the Eitz Yosef, the Eitz Yosef brings from the Magid Tzedek, Shamati Oimrim, Shebiurai, Shegenozai, B'Toirasai HaKadoshah. The Or HaGanuz is latent in the Torah HaKadoshah, in the Torah Sheba'al Peh. The Nefesh HaChaim also quotes the Zohar, Or Nignaz Ba'iraisa. Reb Chaim Volozhiner in the Hakdamah of the Shnei Eliyahu, he says from the Goyin, the Or HaGanuz is in the Torah. Rabbi say, where in the Torah? Which book? So says the Roikeach, and says Reb Pinchas Karatzer, how many Mesechtas do we have? How many Mesechtas of Shas are there? Lamid Vav Mesechtais. There are 36 Mesechtais. In fact, the Ber Heitev says, when you shake your lulav is oisios, Lamid Vav, Lamid Vez. Take the 36 Mesechtas and put them on your heart. The first Tshuva, Shalsa Chus, Maria Assad, talks about the Cheshbain of Halichas Oilam Lai. There are 36 Mesechtas. So the Or HaGanuz is in the Shas. It's in Shas Bavli. When you learn Shas, when you learn Torah Sheba'al Peh, you are accessing the Or HaGanuz, the original light of creation, with which you could see from one end of the world to the other end of the world. Gedolei Yisrael, who are immersed in the Torah, they have in their soul, they have in their neshama, the Or HaGanuz, they could see millions of miles away. They could see from one end of the world to the other. They have access to the original light of creation, the Or HaGanuz, the Or Shegnozai HaKadosh Baruch Hu LaTzadikim. So it's hidden somewhere in the Torah. Did that light ever come out? Was there ever a time that the original light of creation came out, was brought to the forefront? That when the Rebbeinu Shalom said, you see, it's interesting, when Rebbeinu Shalom created the world, he wanted the light to be a certain way. It wasn't Vayihi Or, it wasn't Vayihi Chen, it was Vayihi Or. Did it ever happen that the creation was, so to speak, fixed for a little while? That when the Rebbeinu Shalom said, Vayomer Elokim Yehi Or, it was Vayihi Chen. My Zayda, I mentioned Zol Gesundsein, was Baruch Hashem Zakin Muflag. His grandfather was a Rav in the city of Linschitz in the 1860s, when the Malbim was a Rav in various communities, and usually after a short while he was chased out. They were roidif the Malbim kamat from every Rabbanus he had. And he ended up one Erev Shabbos in Linschitz as a Stama, Pashat Yid. He needed a place to go. He stayed in Linschitz for quite a while. He wrote the Malbim in the city of Linschitz when my grandfather's grandfather happened to be the Rav of that city. So my grandfather's grandfather was best friends with the Malbim. So to me, it's an amazing thing. I could sit with my grandfather. He saw his Zayda who was friendly with the Malbim. Can you imagine? Here, it's 2020, and you could sit next to somebody who knew somebody who knew the Malbim. You know, it's not even going, it's going back, 9 generations. The Malbim wrote a sefer on Chumash, Eretz Chemda. In the Eretz Chemda, the Malbim says, there was one time in history when the Rebbeinu Shalom said, Vayomer Elokim Yehi Or, Vayihi Chen. When Aaron HaKoyen lit the Menorah, what does the pasuk say? We're going to relate it tomorrow. Vayas Kain Aaron. And Aaron corrected, he fixed the Kain. It should have said Vayomer Elokim Yehi Or Vayehi Chen. It didn't, because the Or HaGanos had to be stowed away. It was Vayomer Elokim Yehi Or Vayehi Or, but it wasn't Vayehi Chen. It was hidden. The Or HaGanos was hidden. When Aaron lit the menorah, it was Mashlim the Bria. The Bria came back to Vayomer Elokim Yehi Or Vayehi Chen. Vayas Kain Aaron. How does the laning end tomorrow? Kain asas ha-menorah. Kain asas ha-menorah. When Moshe made that menorah, he fixed creation. He brought the Or HaGanos out to the world. Now, why does the menorah bring the Or HaGanos out to the world? What's special about the menorah? What does the menorah have to do with the Or HaGanos? Well, we understand, Rabbi say, where is the Torah? The Torah is in Shas, in the Tar Shabbat Peh. By the way, how many Neiros do we light on Chanukah, says the Bnei Yissaschar? We light 36 Neiros on Chanukah. Because when we light the menorah on Chanukah, we are accessing also the Or HaGanos. We're bringing that original light of creation out to the world. What day of the year did the Rebbeinu Shalom say, Vayomer Elokim Yehi Or? The 25th day of Elul, says the Shla HaKadosh. So that was the beginning of creation, but something is not really considered started until it has a haschala of 3 months. So 3 months after Vayomer Elokim Yehi Or Vayehi Or, it becomes Vayomer Elokim Yehi Or Vayehi Chen. When we light the 36 Neiros of the menorah culminating on Zos Chanukah, that's why on Zos Chanukah we read, Vayas Kain Aaron, this is the Hashlama of Brias HaOlam. We're fixing up Vayomer Elokim Yehi Or Vayehi Or. We're bringing out the light of the 36 Neiros. We know the menorah represents Tar Shabbat Peh. You know what the Medrash says? I had a Rebbe, Gavaldiga Rebbe. If you would say a good svara, the Rebbe would say, Kaftar v'ferach. Kaftar v'ferach. Which means what? I don't know. Buttons and flowers. Between me and you, if you tried out a yeshiva and you heard a Rebbe tell a Talmud, buttons and flowers, I don't know, you'd come back here, right? Well, what does that mean, buttons and flowers? What kind of compliment is that? So the Netziv writes that there were 2 kelim in the Mikdash. All the hashpah of Torah came to Klal Yisrael through the Mikdash. The Tar Shabbat came through the hashpah of the Aron. The Tar Shabbat Peh came through the hashpah of the Menorah. Haroitze lahachkim yadrim. If you want to become wise, you face the south. The simonach Menorah Shabbat. But the Menorah represented the chachma of the Tar Shabbat Peh. The Menorah was the light of the Tar Shabbat Peh. Hence, the Menorah brought the Or HaGanos out to the forefront. The Menorah brought out to the world the light of the Or HaGanos that was hidden away. So Hashem said, Vayomer Elokim Yehi Or Vayehi Or. And when Aaron lit the menorah, it was Vayas Kain Aharon. Now watch this. There's a Rashi. We're going to learn tomorrow. Vayas Kain Aharon. Who remembers what Rashi said? Vayas what? Gavaldik. Melamed Shivcha Shalan. Nasi is your son, right? No? Rabbi Frank, yeah? Very good. Vayas Kain Aaron, Melamed Shivcha Shal Aaron. We see the praise of Aaron. Shaloi Shina. That Aaron did not deviate. So every Mefaresh and their third cousin asks, what's the big shvach of Aaron that he didn't deviate? Hashem said, light the menorah. So Aaron lit the menorah. What's Aaron going to do? He's going to go golfing. Hashem said to do it, so he does it. That's the big shvach of Aaron. Listen to the Malbim in the Yaretz Chemda. The shvach of Aaron is, Hashem said, Yehi Or. He wished it could have said Vayehi Chen. It didn't. When Aaron said Vayas Kain Aaron, Shivcha Shel Aaron, that he wasn't Meshaneh from the original Kavana of the Bria of Vayomer Elokim Yehi Or and Vayehi Chen. That's Melamed Shivcha Shel and Shalei Shina. So the Or HaGanos is in the Tar Shabbat Peh. its influence to the world is brought to the world through the lighting of the menorah and of Aaron, and says Bnei Yissaschar, when we light the menorah, which by the way, the Ran writes that the menorah is really, our menorah in our house is a hemshech of the menorah in the Beis HaMikdash, which is why it's asur lehishtamesh la'oira, because our menorah is paralleled, is based on the menorah in the Beis HaMikdash. There's an Isser Me'ilah, so to speak, on the oir of our menorah. In fact, I'll tell you a little chiddush. There was a goyin, a big goyin, a Polish goyin, Rabbi Shiur Mikutna. Rabbi Shiur Mikutna has a chiddush nifla. You know, if you look in the Gemara about Mem Adlikin, you ever hear of the Gemara about Mai Chanukah? You ever hear of such a Gemara? Mai Chanukah. Right? Everybody knows the Gemara, Mai Chanukah. L'shana Acheres, what did they do? How did they establish Chanukah? They made a Yom Tif, Behalel V'Hoida. As Rabbi Shiur Mikutna, the Gemara omitted the most important mitzvah of Chanukah, the mitzvah of why the whole sugya of Chanukah is doing it by Mem Adlikin. The Gemara should have said, L'shana Acheres, Kavim V'asam Yomim Toivim, Halel, Hoida, V'hadlakas Haneros. That's the only reason why Chanukah is in Shabbos, because of the menorah, and the Gemara doesn't even say there's a mitzvah to light the menorah when they formulated Chanukah. Says Rabbi Shiur Mikutna, that's because there was no such mitzvah. You ever hear such a chiddush? Why would they make a mitzvah to light the menorah? There's a menorah in the Beis HaMikdash. What in the world would they make a mitzvah to light a menorah in your house for? It was only later on in history, after the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed, that they wanted a zikaron to the lighting of the menorah in the Beis HaMikdash, so the Masakein later, it's Mamish Meduik in the Rambam. The Rambam says when it comes to lighting the menorah, he says you have to say Hallel, you have to say Hoida, Umadlikin Neiros, and they would light Neiros. And then the Rambam is, and then they were Koiveya to light Neiros. So the Rambam says it twice. What's he saying it twice? The answer is that originally there was no such kviyas. They never made such a mitzvah. People did it. Later on in history, after the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed, they were masakein to light the menorah. It's a controversial chiddush, you should know, but that's how Rabbi Shiur Mikutna learns it in a kuntris chastei avos. So the menorah in your house is literally a zikaron and is paralleled after the menorah in the Beis HaMikdash. And when you light the menorah, you're bringing out the original light of creation. Kein asa es ha-menorah. Malamid shivchai shel Aaron shelo shina. Now, remember the candle over your head? So you're wondering, what happened to it? You know, it's not like you have to walk around the rest of your life like on a tightrope because the candle might fall off your head. The candle's not there anymore. Where did the candle go? Why doesn't the Gemara talk about what happened to the candle? The Samar Rebbe says very pashat. What do you think the candle is? You think a malach came and he put a candle on your head? If you know Kol HaTorah Kula, Memela, you have the Or HaGanuz, that's the candle over your head. Behiloi ner alei roishi. The candle is, if you know Kol HaTorah Kula, then you could see Misayfa Olam, Yad Sayfa Olam. Once the malach comes and he makes you forget the Torah, we have to say what happened to the candle. The Or HaGanuz is gone. You don't have to talk about it. It's Mavur Me'elav that there's no light anymore. Now, what was Moshe's problem with the menorah? Moshe didn't understand the menorah. So the Gra says a fantastic chiddush. The Gra says if you make a cheshbon of all the details of the menorah, the Gra says there are 22 geviyim, 22 cups, goblets on the menorah. There were 11 kaftorim, 11 knobs. We're up to 33. There were 9 prachim. There were 9 flowers. We're up to 42. And there were zayin kanim. That's 49. There are 49 designs on the menorah. What's the significance of that? The Gemara says in Rosh Hashanah, Chamishim Shari Bina Nivru Ba'olam. There are 50 gateways of wisdom. Chulam nitnu l'Moshe chasar achas. They're all given to Moshe except for one. Shenemar v'atachasrei mi'am elikim. Moshe had all branches of wisdom except for one. Moshe did not have the Shar Nun. Says the Gra, the 49 details of the menorah represent the 49 sha'arim of Chachma, which Moshe Rabbeinu knew very well, and that's why Moshe Rabbeinu had no problem with the pratim of the menorah. Moshe didn't understand menorah atzma. The menorah itself is the sharnun. So Moshe Rabbeinu did not know the sharnun. Now, when Hashem told Moshe the following words, V'zeh maseh ha-menorah, you have to say that Hashem gave to Moshe Rabbeinu some of the sharnun, according to the Gra. Because Moshe Rabbeinu was naskasha b'menorah. And Hashem said, no, here it is, v'zeh. But does that mean Moshe Rabbeinu had some of the sharnun? Avada. Many Mefarshim say that Moshe Rabbeinu definitely had some elements of the sharnun. The Chassam Sofer writes, that's why his Talmud was Yehoshua bin Nun. He was Mavin, the sharnun that he learned from Moshe Rabbeinu. Even when Moshe Rabbeinu went up to Har Sinai, it says, Vayidaber Hashem Moshe es kol. Kol, that Rizal says, all 50. What? Bin Nun, the Chassam Sofer, Parsha Shlach. So, but then the Arizal says, Vayidaber Hashem Moshe es kol hadvarim, he got sharnun, but then Hashem said, Lech, read, go down from Lech, go down from 50, you have to go down to 49, but on Moshe Rabbeinu's last day, Vayal Moshe, me arvois moyav, gematria 49, el har nivoi nun boy, he got 50 on his last day. So Moshe Rabbeinu is going back and forth from 49 to 50, but he had some understanding of the sharnun. L'choira, when Hashem told Moshe Rabbeinu, V'zeh maseh ha-menorah, he gave him a little bit of the sharnun. You're good? We're good so far? How are we all doing? Yichap? It's Geshmak Torah, right? So, Moshe Rabbeinu got a little bit of the sharnun when Hashem taught him the menorah. So let's make a very simple cheshbon. When did Hashem tell Moshe, V'zeh maseh ha-menorah? And the answer doesn't say anywhere. But let's think about it. Let's speculate. We know the Nesiim brought karbanos for 12 days. And what was Aaron HaKohen's reaction? He had Chalishas Hadas. Aaron HaKohen said, you all bringing karbanos, I have no chilek in the karbanos. Hashem said, no, don't worry. V'zeh maseh ha-menorah. Your chilek shalcha gedolah mishalahem. Question. That took place. When did the Nesiim bring karbanos? When did the Nesiim bring their karbanos? Yesterday. No, when did the Nesiim bring their karbanos? When? Rosh Chodesh Nisan. Yeah, for 12 days. When were they supposed to have brought their karbanos? The Medrash says it was supposed to be on Chanukah. But Hashem pushed off the Chanukah's HaMizbeach to Rosh Chodesh Nisan, and he told Chanukah, I'll pay you back a different time. I think it's mistaber to say that the Nesiim, they didn't bring their karbanos on Chanukah, but they knew what karbanos they were going to bring on Chanukah. It doesn't say Hashem didn't say anything. They knew what they needed to bring, but it was stalled till Rosh Chodesh Nisan. And l'chayra then, when did Aaron HaKohen have Chalishas Hadas? Probably on Chanukah. Because that's when the karbanos were supposed to be brought. And Aaron had Chalishas Hadas. And when did Hashem tell Moshe Rabbeinu, V'zeh maseh ha-menorah mikshat? On Chanukah. So when did Hashem teach Moshe Rabbeinu the menorah? On Chanukah. And when did Hashem teach Moshe Rabbeinu the sharnun? On Chanukah. And when did HaKadosh Baruch Hu teach Moshe Rabbeinu the soidos ha-Torah? On Chanukah. So maybe when the Chassam Sofer says that you have to be very careful, B'liman ha-Torah on Chanukah, because this is the Zman that HaKadosh Baruch Hu taught Moshe Rabbeinu the soidos ha-Torah. Maybe this is what the Chassam Sofer is referring to. That where is there any basis that HaKadosh Baruch Hu taught Moshe Rabbeinu the secrets of Torah on Chanukah? Maybe, just maybe, V'zeh maseh ha-menorah, which very reasonably occurred on Chanukah, was where HaKadosh Baruch Hu taught Moshe Rabbeinu the secrets of Torah on Chanukah. Now, the rest of the year, Rabbi Sai, we're limited. We have very big limitations. We're limited to the Shar Mem Tes. And therefore, as soon as you get up to the Pei or the Samach, you stop dead in your tracks. You stop. You can't go beyond the Gedarim. You can't go past what what you're supposed to know. But if there's one day a year that Rebbe Shem, so to speak, gives Klal Yisrael an extra measure, an extra little dose of Hashpas HaTorah, of understanding the Soidos HaTorah, if there's any day, it's probably the day that the Or HaGanos is brought out to the world more than any other day, which l'chayra would be Zois Chanukah, because that's the Hashlama, it's the 8th day when we finish the 36th lights of Chanukah, the Neros, corresponding to the 36 hours that the Or HaGanos was Neshamesh. So maybe that's the reason why every other day of the year, you got to stop at the end of the Parsha. You have Gedorim, you can't go too much. Don't, stop. You have to stop at a certain degree. But there's one day a year we are not bound by any limitations. We are not restricted. We are not held back. We could go to the end of Parshas Nosai and go straight through. We're not bound by the Shar Mem test. We're going straight for the gold on Zois Chanukah. We need to read Cain, Asa, Es HaMenorah, Vayas, Cain, Aaron. We have to be mashlim the Lamed Vav Shois that the Or HaGanos was Neshtamish in the beginning of the Bria. And I happen to see that the Bnei Yissaschar writes in a sefer on Chumash called Chidushay Mahartza, Parshas Behaloischa is the 36th Parsha in the Chumash. So tomorrow, when we finish the 36 Neros, we go into the 36th Parsha in the Torah, and we have a little bit of a te'ima, a little flavor for the Shar Nun. Marv Rabbi say, I don't know, I guess it's a matana min hashamayim. The longest Kriyas HaTorah of the weekday is tomorrow. How many psukim? Watch this. 3 psukim for Kayin, 3 psukim for Levi, 44 psukim, I think, Keneged the Mem Daled Neros Chanukah, a total of 50 psukim of laning on Zois Chanukah. Half level fella. The Shar Nun, Zois Chanukah, is the Moshe's completion of learning the 50 Sha'arim of Chachma. And what a great opportunity if the Rebbeinu Shem gave over to Moshe Rabbeinu, the Noisei HaTorah, all of these treasures and gems on Zois Chanukah. Imagine how much Siyata D'Shmaya, imagine how much Matana of Torah the Rebbeinu Shem could be mashpia on us. So we should all be Zoicha, and the schus of your amelus and the schus of your dveikus to Torah, the Rebbeinu Shem should be mashpia on all of us. Shefa, bracha v'atzlacha, shefa of Torah, and the Rebbeinu Shem should give us siyata d'shmaya should be neskayim, gal einai, v'abita, neflois, mitarasecha, afreilach and Chanukah. Shkayach.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.